حي على الفلاح.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He commands in the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jal, He knows for the severity of this eyesight. He says in the Quran, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Say to the believing men, let them lower their gaze. وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. And let them protect and preserve their chastity. Allah Azza wa Jal, right directly after He says, oh, say to the believing men, lower their gaze. The very next thing that Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, let them preserve their chastity. Why? What's the link between the eyesight and preserving your chastity? Because preserving your chastity starts off with the eyesight. It begins with one look. It begins with one simple look. You see, Allah Azza wa Jal in the very next verse, He also makes it explicit to the females. He says, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ. Say to the believing females, let them lower their gaze and preserve their chastity. Very direct, very explicit. Say to the believing men, lower their gaze. Next verse, say to the believing females, lower their gaze. What for? So you can preserve your chastity. What for? So you can guide your private parts. My brothers in Islam, Allah Azza wa Jal has given you and entrusted you with this blessing. My brothers in Islam, Allah Azza wa Jal, He makes that link. Why didn't He say right after the verse, right after the part where He says, lower their gaze, why didn't He say anything like, let them protect their tongues, or let them protect their hearing? All of these senses are close to what? The eyesight. Yet Allah Azza wa Jal, He doesn't mention any of that. He takes 3 steps after that, 4 steps after that, and He says, preserve their chastity. Why? Because the one who frees their desires so he can look, the one who frees his desires so he can look, so he can use the eyesight against something in which Allah Azza wa Jal is not pleased of, he is very easily going to use his desires so he can fulfill them in the haram. So Allah Azza wa Jal makes it explicit. Preserve your chastity. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he himself, he knew the severity of the eyesight. So once upon a time, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he comes to Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And this is Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, not any companion. This is Ali, the 4th Khalifa. And here, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he comes to Ali and he says to him, Ya Ali, لا تتبع النظرة النظرة فإن لك النظرة الأولى. He says to him, Ya Ali, do not follow up a look by another look. He says, do not follow up a look by another look. For you is the very first look only. Period. And he's saying it to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. For what about us? What about us? So whenever you're walking in the street, my brother in Islam, and you see something and you have that first look, don't look again. For you is the very first look. After that it becomes haram. You do not look at another female. So if you've had your first one by accident, look away and then don't follow it again. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says a very, very beautiful saying. He says, دافع النظرة فإن لم تفعل صارت خطرة. He says, stop that look, stop that very first look. Stop it. But if you don't, it becomes a step closer. And then he says, دافع الخطرة فإن لم تفعل صارت فكرة. He says, stop that step closer. And if you don't, it becomes a thought. Right? And then he says, دافع الفكرة فإن لم تفعل صارت عملا. He says, stop that thought, and if you don't, then it becomes an action. Right? And then he says after that, دافع العمل فإن لم تفعل صارت عادة فشق عليه فشق عليه بعد ذلك أن يتركها. He says, stop that action. Stop that action. And if you don't stop it, it becomes a habit. It becomes a habit. And then after that, when it becomes a habit, it becomes very hard for him to stop. Right? Why is it that today, when a person is hooked onto pornography, he says to someone, brother, I can't get off it. I can't get off. I can't stop looking, because he's made it become a habit in his life. So he finds it extremely difficult. He finds it extremely difficult to stop looking. You know? This is what? It all begins with a simple look. One simple look. A blessing in which Allah Azza wa Jal has entrusted you with, and you used it for the wrong so you can destroy yourself. I can't stop. Because it's become a habit. It all comes back down to the very, very beginning. One simple look.